Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and I'm delighted to welcome an accomplished and respected individual from Los Angeles, USA, Jay Moonfields. Jay, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ashutosh. It's really good to be here.
Thank
I'm
you.
really grateful for you having me here.
Thank you. Jay is a somatic coach and an author. And all of you know I'm very partial to authors. She's an author of a book titled Teaching People Not Poses, which has sold over 10,000 copies. So, Jay, let me start by asking you to tell me about your own journey and what got you interested in the area of yoga and wellness.
In my childhood, I was a competitive gymnast. So I was very strong, very flexible, but also, as you probably are well aware, it's a difficult sport to be in as a young person.
Correct.
And when I went to college, my freshman year of college, my boyfriend's sister took me to a yoga class for the first time. And it was I loved, I was flexible and strong enough to do everything in the class. So I was like, oh, this is kind of fun. But at the end, when they had everybody lie down in Shavasana and essentially integrate that whole time and just focus on breath, it was the first time in my life that I've ever had a sense of like actually fully being in my body.
Amazing.
And which was strange because I had trained as this elite gymnast, so you would think I had been really in my body, but I wasn't. I knew how to manipulate my body and I knew how to perform, but I didn't know how to be the one behind my own eyes. And I was hooked immediately. And I At the same time, I was getting into rock climbing for the first time ever as well. College, you're trying all these things. And I noticed how the combination of the climbing, which I called vertical yoga, because it's all about presence and strength and flexibility.
Yeah.
The combination of that with the yoga and the meditation was completely changing my emotional health, my social connections. And so I got so fascinated by that I designed my own major. I went to the dean and I said, look, I want to study the mind-body connection. Because this was 1998 when people weren't really
Right.
studying the mind-body connection yet.
Correct.
So yeah, I started when I was 19 years old, really investigating. Well, my degree was in psychosocial health and human movement. This idea of like, how is it that if we are fully present in our bodies, it helps us at the level of our psychology and our social interactions, and can be used preventatively for mental health disorders.
Amazing. Amazing. Jay, you also done a lot of work in two areas, which is social and emotional intelligence and leveraging the nervous system, body, and brain. So I want to ask you a few questions on social and emotional intelligence now. How would you define social and emotional intelligence in the context of leadership? And why is it important?
Good question. I think my most basic definition of social and emotional intelligence is that your insides match your outsides. In terms of, I know what my emotions are, I know what my values are, I know what my things that activate me or trigger me. I know where I'm compensating for lack of confidence. All these, I know where I'm defensive. I know the spectrum of my inner world.
Right.
And I can behave externally in a way that is truthful to myself. And I think this is a key characteristic of any leader. Any leader is someone whose insides match their outsides, right? Who when they say something, you can feel them behind their words.
Right.
You can feel their presence. I often say to people who I'm working with, like, think of the difference between someone you've been around who you think of as being a good leader versus an embodied leader, someone you can actually feel. And so I think social emotional intelligence is, especially because I'm a somatic body person, it absolutely has to do with being the one behind your own eyes and knowing what your inner landscape is, so that you can more skillfully operate in the outer landscape and relationally with other people. I mean, the word is integrity,
Yeah,
really.
very interesting. And what techniques can leaders use to manage their emotions, especially in high pressure situations?
Everybody always wants to know the answer to this question. I get asked that a lot. My first LinkedIn learning course was on how to manage your emotions at work, and
Mm,
it came out in 2020, and it immediately just became this huge, so many people watched it that year because so much globally, emotions were really big that year. Um, so again, coming from the background of being someone who's a somatic embodied professional,
mm,
uh, understanding that your emotions have a physical component is such a key aspect of being able to manage them in those hot moments. So, for example, I use the word hot there.
mhm.
When a person is angry, there's usually heat involved with anger.
Mm,
There's often like a clinchiness in the hands and the
mm,
shoulders, versus if someone's sad. I mean, can you feel it when I talk to you? Like if you think of being
yeah.
angry, it has a
Mm,
it has a very different physical mark than
right.
being sad. Sad typically feels heavy. It can feel cool, like you're lacking life force in you. Um, and so if you understand that your physical sensations are part of how your brain reads emotion,
Mhm,
and if you make that conscious, you have the capacity to then use your body to also give you a different physical sensation. So I'm going to step back and say, if you are only leading from here up,
mm,
you're not aware of what's going on in your body,
right.
it's still impacting your brain.
Mm,
It's still making you think, if you're angry but you're not aware of it in your body, it's still going to change the tone of your voice. It's going to change probably the words that you say. It's going to
mm,
change your body language. But if you can feel, oh, I'm hot, I'm tense, I'm angry, so you can feel it, you can name it, and then in the world of somatic experiencing, there's a word called felt resources. And a felt resource is anything that you consciously choose to do with your body that is either neutral or pleasant, so that it gives your body a level of experience that is okay. So let's say you're in a meeting at work, and one of your colleagues says something that just really sets you off, and
mhm,
you're mad and you get hot and you feel your body get tense and heated. A felt resource might be something like feeling your sits bones on your seat,
mm,
or feeling your feet in your shoes,
mm,
because the feeling of your say your toes wiggling in your shoes for most people is neutral, maybe pleasant because you're like, oh, my toes aren't cramped anymore.
mm,
So if you can feel, yes, I'm hot and tense because I'm angry, but it's also true that my I can feel my toes wiggling, it
mhm,
tells your brain not everything is awful in this moment. I
right.
don't have to act on this anger.
Mm,
It's almost like it gives, instead of the anger being your whole experience,
mm,
it makes the anger a part of your experience, so that you have access to what I would call your resourced self, and you can behave differently. Now, you might then later, when you're out of that meeting, need to go and, you know, throw some rocks in the park or whatever. You might need to let off that steam or feel the emotion itself. But for leaders or people who are at work and emotions come up, being able to kind of give yourself a secondary layer of physical experience
mhm.
that you're aware of really helps you to not get overtaken by the emotion.
Amazing. What a great response. Thank you. My next question, Jay, is how does social and emotional intelligence contribute to building trust within colleagues or an organization?
I mean, that is the that is the number one thing of social emotional intelligence creates
Mm,
trust. And it creates trust, I think, by, if we go back to social and emotional intelligence is insides matching outsides. That means that that in and of itself is creating this I want to keep using the word trust, but like this sense of I know this is a place where it can be safe for me to give feedback or receive feedback. This is a place where I can say no, or this is a place where I can speak up. That being in a culture where there is a sense that people have access to their inner world and can manage it or speak responsibly from that just changes everything in the sense of being able to interact and collaborate in a way that feels safer.
Very interesting. My next question, Jay, is that what are some effective SEI-based approaches to resolve conflicts?
So one of the key ideas that I think most people aren't exposed to is this idea that there is more than one reality in when there's two people involved. So in terms of social emotional intelligence, when it comes to being in conflict, most of us unconsciously, we don't do this out of malice, go into a conflict situation feeling like there's going to be a winner. And if there's going to be a winner, that means there's also going to be a loser, right? If one person's right, the other person's wrong. If one person wins, the other person loses. But that black and white dichotomy is just false to begin with, because there isn't just one reality that somebody gets to win. So if you and I are in a conflict, an SEI tool to use is for each one of us to see that the other person's reality can be wildly different than mine, and it doesn't make them right or wrong and me right or wrong. And that if we can acknowledge both. So let's say I would say, Ashutosh, I see that you're upset by this situation, and I can understand why you would be upset. And then, I would name, here's why I can see that it makes sense to me you're upset. I don't have to agree with you that you're upset. I just get to say, it makes sense to me. And then I say, and here's my experience. My experience is that this isn't a viable, sustainable option. And I would really like to be able to look with you at what we might do differently. So the tool is to always remember that there isn't one reality that needs to be one, as in WON. There's two realities that need to be put on the table, because once someone feels seen and understood, they are much more likely and willing to want to see and understand you and find common ground. But if you go in just thinking, I'm gonna get Ashutosh to see this, I'm gonna make him see that then you're gonna get defensive, of course, and we're off to the races.
Absolutely. What you're telling me is the old line of if you're not with me, you are against me doesn't apply in this at all.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, great response. Great response. Thank you. So one more question relating to SEI, and then I want to talk about your other area of expertise, which is leveraging the nervous system.
Sure.
Jay, what are some daily practices leaders can adopt to continuously develop their social and emotional intelligence?
Well, I think, so you mentioned the nervous system. I'm going to say a bit about that and come back to the second part of that question. Our nervous system is the part of our internal system that's constantly and forever looking outside and inside for, am I safe? Am I safe? Am I safe? If it gets the answer no, whether it's correct or not, it's going to send you into a stress response. And most people know the typical stress response is fight, flight, freeze. But I like to think of it in terms of upregulate or downregulate. So upregulate would be the fight or flight. Like I'm going to activate to to fight against or get away from this threat. And the freeze is more of the, I'm going to just kind of go into collapse here. So if we think about you're really activated or upregulated, or you're really deactivated or downregulated. Those are places we go when we're stressed. In the middle is what's called, well, being regulated. And this is our social engagements, part of the system. So when you ask the question, am I safe? If you get the answer yes, then there's no need to go up or down for survival or stress responses. So you've got these three settings, which is to come back to your question about what can leaders do on a daily basis. I would say start to become aware of what those three things feel like to you. So when you're upregulated or you're activated, most people tend to be moving fast, talking fast, breathing shallow, their heart rate might be up. They might, because they're in fight mode, they might feel a little bit more adversarial towards people. Like their colleague might not feel so chummy, they might, we tend to in that place overwork, multitask. Can you feel it as I talk about it? It's like this.
Correct.
On the other end of the spectrum is you feel quite detached. You might be very quiet. You're just, everything in your system is kind of slowed, apathetic, really not wanting to connect with people. And so those are two different ends of the spectrum that people go to when they're stressed. And then in the middle place is when you feel great. And you feel connected and you feel creative and you feel collaborative. And so as I'm talking about that, for people to listen and be like, what do those three places feel like for me? And then the question to work with on a daily basis throughout the day is, what state am I in? Am I up here? Am I down here? Or am I in the middle? Because depending on where you are depends on what you do to come back to that center place where you feel good. And this is kind of getting into nervous system regulation, because when we're upregulated and we're at that fight flight sort of place, it might sound good in theory to meditate, but it's really hard to get there because everything is agitated. Conversely, if you're in that downregulated place where you're just apathetic and low energy, it might, you might say, well, people say go for a run or exercise when you feel. You don't want to go for a run or exercise when you're in that place. So the things that you do to respond for quote unquote self-care change dependent upon where you are in that spectrum.
Yeah, very well explained. Thank you.
Yeah.
And since we spoke about the nervous system, Jay, what is the relationship between the nervous system, the body, and the brain? And one explanation you gave us was, there's at the top and the bottom and somewhere in the middle. And like a pendulum, we all want to come and rest in the center rather than being two extremes. But what is the relationship between the nervous system, body, and brain to achieve personal and professional excellence?
I think it's understanding that, as you say, like we do pendulum throughout those. It's a natural part of our human beingness to need to activate, to get more things done, to finish the deadline before you have to go pick your kids up from school. Like there's a natural need to speed up. Whereas there's also, when you've been hill climbing, as I say, like you've just been doing a lot for too long, it's natural to want to come down and kind of detach and go back to being a little bit of a turtle in a shell for a little bit. And those are completely natural processes. So understanding that this is supposed to be a fluid process, and that leaders can use that as a way to be in a conscious relationship with their self-care and how they respond to themselves. while knowing that the idea is that you never get stuck in either of those places. And that if you get stuck in either being on, go, 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 or detached and apathetic, that those are times for you to seek out coaching, therapy, embodied practices like yoga, tai chi, things like that that help bring you back to being that person behind your own eyes.
Very interesting.
Because the body, to you were talking about the body and the brain, your body and your brain are communicating all the time. And 80% of the communication that's going between body and brain goes from body to brain. Only 20% goes from brain to body.
Amazing.
So the more intelligence, the more awareness you have of your body, from posture, how you're sitting, to the sorts of signals your body's sending you, like, are you sweating a lot? I know I used to, when I get nervous, I used to get really red, my neck and my chest would get red. So these are body signals that are saying, like, hey, something's going on.
Correct.
And if I know how to pay attention, feel those, read those, I can actually control the messages that my body's sending my brain and have more conscious choice over how I show up.
Very well explained. Thank you. So time for one more question.
Okay.
Last question now. How can one build emotional resilience through understanding and leveraging our nervous system?
Well, first I would say, I think emotional resilience is less, let me say that differently. I think a lot of people in professional culture would say that emotional resilience means that you don't have emotions, right? That you kind of have this narrow bandwidth where you're just
Correct.
easygoing, calm. I don't ascribe to that. I don't believe in that. I think emotional resilience is knowing that there is no emotion that you can't have. That whether it's sadness, fear, joy, excitement, that you have the capacity to hold that. So I think of emotional resilience as almost like growing your wattage. If you think of a light bulb, 60-watt bulb can only have so much light that comes out, whereas a 120-watt bulb can run more energy and shine bigger. And I think of emotional resilience as being able to be the 120-watt version of yourself emotionally, while knowing that you have the ability to choose when the emotions come out. It's not that you don't want to feel them, it's that you get to not get run by them. And I feel like I didn't, what was that? I feel like I didn't answer the question. I'm talking about.
I think you explained emotional resilience very, very well. But the second part, which is how can one build emotional resilience to understand and leverage our nervous system?
Well, again, it comes back to body awareness, body awareness, body awareness. Because most of the time, when people say they're feeling an emotion, what they're really doing is they're thinking it. They're thinking, I'm sad.
Yeah.
And that creates the sense of sadness, but it doesn't move the emotion through you. So if you know how to feel, when I'm sad, for example, I feel like there's something in the pit of my stomach and I feel really heavy. And if I know how to feel the feeling, like the sensation, the actual physical sensation, not run from it, name it to myself, oh, I'm sad. I know what this is. I'm sad. That being able to sense it and then name it actually helps our brain integrate to come back to being more of a healthy integrated brain that then doesn't set off our nervous system into a stress response.
Right.
So if you can stay long enough with the sensation, not think about it, but just be with, oh, it might not be a pleasant sensation, but it's not, no one's ever died from feeling a sensation. And if you can build that confidence that you can feel things, then your brain gets more and more able to stay integrated so that you don't get dysregulated in your nervous system. There's a lot of other scientific things in between there, but that's the gist of the kind of the flow of that.
Very well said. And on that note, Jay, I just want to say thank you so much for speaking to me about your journey. It's amazing from a gymnast how you discovered yoga, and from yoga you discovered so much about wellness and so many other different aspects of being happy, and about, of course, the nervous system, body, and brain. Thank you for speaking to me about social and emotional intelligence. I think you explained it so well when we discussed a little bit about anger. And I know that each of these topics can go into a full podcast on its own because there's so much to talk about. But thank you for speaking to me about anger. Thank you for speaking to me about conflict. Thank you also for speaking to me about the nervous system, body, and brain, and how all of these are interlinked, and how our body tends to give us a message every time there is a fight or flight response, or whether there is any kind of a challenge or any issue facing us. Thank you for speaking to me, and good luck to you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Ashutosh. I hope your listeners benefit from this.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.